Welcome to the Lost Signals Discusses Literature,
where we apply the revolutionary Mott skill
to classic and contemporary works of prose.
So, join us once again, won't you? Hello, everyone, and welcome to a slightly different version of the Lost Signals Discusses Literature. Today we're going to do kind of a more free-form discussion. I'm Jonathan Ian Manzer, here with Scott Doyle.
And don't look in my basement.
Christopher Morgan.
Good evening.
And Stephen Ramosi.
Yeah, I don't have anything for this one.
So, I was looking to listen to music from my youth, and specifically looking up the Fugees' Killing Me Softly. And I like reading comments on YouTube videos, and I saw a lot of comments referring to this comic, this manhwa. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Korean manga called Killing Stalking. It ran from 2016 to 2019 by Koogi, and I became fascinated by it. I talked quite a bit about it with them over the past couple of months.
We've been somewhat planning it for a bit.
But I forced them to look at it. So we looked at the first 10 episodes of Killing Stalking. Basically, the plotline is Boom is a frail man with borderline personality disorder who gets an obsession with Sang-woo. Breaks into his house and finds out that Sang-woo, pictured behind Stephen Ramosi there, which I would be terrified by if that was actually looking over my stuff. Finds out that Yang-woo is a serial killer. Or Sang-woo is a serial killer. And Sang-woo keeps him alive, partly because Bum reminds him of his mother. They start a very psychosexual relationship, and it's about the Stockholm Syndrome of Boom, and the romance or not. Actually, it's fascinating, the fandom discussion of it between Sang-woo and Boom. But that's basically, I feel that the first 10 episodes really kind of shows the first arc of the story, so that's why I decided to
it's got a very good cutting off point from the first 10, yeah.
But what were all of your impressions of Killing Stalking?
I found it fascinating. Fascinating is a great word, because there is a love story in a twisted way, but I like the fact that through Bum's internal monologue, you always kind of get pulled out like, no, this isn't romantic. This isn't romantic. These aren't genuine. There's this whole aspects of codependency I really like. It goes beyond, like, in a lot of ways, the Stockholm Syndrome or victimizer. I mean, there is both of these people came from codependent families that were destructive, and they have this codependency about. I mean, Sang-woo won't kill or let die a Bum, and it's this whole. So it's tragedy. Sang-woo, he's one of these characters that I'd put like in the way of like the reimagined Sherlock, the one with Benedict Cumberbatch in it, of Moriarty or Hannibal, where it's like, I'm not sure if the fact that his sexuality is important so much as that it's a sense of power. Like, and the characters that I'd mentioned before, yeah, you can't imagine either one of these guys being a virgin or whatever, but you can't, they're probably bisexual, but their use of sex is for power rather than fulfillment. And that's definitely Sang-woo. But like, both of them get caught up in the romance of aspects of it. It's fascinating. It is just really, really, really fascinating.
And we will go much farther into the romance, or not, because this is a actual huge thing within fandom and academia about this. But anyway, I just wanted your initial impressions on it.
So I said to you guys, it might be one of the most graphic of graphic novels that I have read. And yeah, Chris, like, it's fascinating is a good word, but I don't know, like if not beyond that, like it's just intense. It's in your face, but it's not there. Like it's not there just for shock value, although it does have a lot of that, right? But it's not only that. It explores more things beneath the surface of it. But there's some unflinching stuff, depictions in it that I think serve the greater themes and exploration that the author wanted to look at. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I mean, yes, I enjoyed it, but not in the sense of like, oh, it's such a cool graphic. Like, it was some again very adult, mature looking at this relationship that is kind of fucked up, and not kind of more than fucked up, but
Yeah.
at the same time, like it does have this like I do like, and I'll let you talk about it a bit more, but I can see why there is a divide even in the hardcore fandom as to the question of whether or not it is a true romance, or it's to Chris's point where it's just like one person playing psychological mind games for power, and the sex is sort of like secondary to that in a sense. But either way, I did find myself like getting drawn into it, and yeah. So since you decided to tell us to go to the first 10 chapters and the events that the cliffhanger, as I said, that happens, they're like that is a big a turning point in their relationship, as regardless of what the nature of that relationship is. And so yeah, I did enjoy it, and it's a quick read too. Like again, we'll probably get into the formatting of it and so forth, and why it's really well suited to the way I think it's intended to be read. But yeah, I mean, you as you mentioned, you had found it a couple months back, and we're trying to like fit it in here and there to our schedule. And yeah, I think I don't regret you having suggested to us and having read it. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll address that, right? Like there's this infinite scroll, it's an infinite scroll type of comic, right? Where like you just start at the top and you end at the bottom. It's almost like an actual scroll where you just go down and down and down until you're done. Which is a really interesting way to do things, and something that has been, discussed among scholars of comics and things like that as like a new way to display things for a long time, which I actually really like. This comic is like it's just fucked up. Like there's no other way to say it. There's a lot of fucked up shit that happens. It's very dark, and you have to know that going into it. I'm honestly, I am very much on the side of this is not like a loving relationship. This is not a romantic relationship. This is supposed to be like, this seems to me, after reading 10 chapters, that it's supposed to be a story of a very abusive relationship that's happening between these two characters. And the fact that it's written by a woman makes me think that, and I don't know, I haven't done a ton of research into it, but makes me think that this is a story that wants us to see why people stay in abusive relationships and don't leave them. And I think it does a very good job at that, to be honest. Like it's like you get to see like Boom's side of the story and why he would even contemplate staying in this relationship. And it is something that you like unfortunately see a lot more, I think, in heterosexual relationships where women are made to are abused and like and become dependent on their abusers, right? And like I think that's what's happening in this, and I think it's what it's depicting. And yeah, I mean it's a fascinating story. It's very readable. It's hard to get through at a lot of times, and it's hard to like because it's so easy to equate or it's so easy to like understand kind of where someone in Yoon Boom's position would stay and not try to escape. It makes it that much harder to read because it's very difficult to like put yourself in the position of saying like, yeah, this is a relationship that you shouldn't be in, but you want to stay because you've been trained to stay in it to a degree. So, I mean, that's kind of what I got out of the first 10 chapters.
Steve, what I really liked about this is that I found myself rooting for their relationship. You know, beyond sex, just the tenderness. Even though in the back of your mind, like, no, this is an abusive relationship. And that's why I was talking about the internal monologue, because she does a very good job of like saying, well, if you're in a relationship, why are you staying there? Because when there's signs of compassion or whatever, that person must, I don't know personally. I mean, I've had some stupid relationships, but you know, nothing to even close to this level. You know, she does a really good job of making you feel like why somebody would want to. It's like, oh, this person's being nice to me. And if this were a healthy relationship, these two would be, you know, you'd definitely be rooting for them. But that's why I'm saying it's interesting because
the entire point of it is that it's not a healthy relationship, though.
What'd you say?
I said the entire point of it is that it's not a healthy relationship.
No, but that's my point, is that you kind of, she does a very good job of getting you into situations where you can, I mean, at least for me, there's part of me is just like, man, I wish this wasn't this, because I'm rooting for the relationship on some level, even though intellectually I know the reality of it. I'm just saying that I'm just speaking to the effectiveness of your point and what she did.
I mean, I get what you mean, like, and I think that's where a lot of the fan base is coming from, but like, I don't understand it per se, because like this is a relationship built on the like quote unquote man in the relationship, right? Like the guy that makes the other guy wear a dress and like, you know, asserts dominance in the relationship. His first move is to break his legs so that he can't leave, right? Like it's never, for me, it's never anything that I'm interested in rooting for. And like, I get that people do, but I don't feel that way. And I never felt that way throughout the entire reading through it. It's not like, it's a relationship built on gaslighting and making someone else feel so shitty that they feel like they have no reason to leave, or like that they have no right to leave.
It's interesting because the world did that to Boom as well.
That's true.
Sang-woo's, as terrible as a monster that he is the only person in the entire world who gives even a damn about
showed
Boom.
him any attention.
And like, look, his family doesn't even come looking for him.
Mm-hmm.
He has no one else but Sang-woo, and a modicum of reaching out is much better than none at all. And that's where I can draw the idea of where their romance comes from. It's two broken people who find themselves, and granted, yeah, you can't say that them bringing in other characters and murdering them is at all healthy. But who am I to say what a healthy relationship is? I don't know what love is. And what is
love?
And why? That's what's interesting about the articles is that
Baby Don't Hurt Me is the second part of that, Scott, which you forgot.
That was the song, yeah. Yeah, that might be the end credits. But no, it's to me, it is fascinating because I think there's a lot of people out there who are actually, I think a majority of people in the world don't know what actual love is, and they are trying to find some kind of connection in the world. And I actually want to talk about Sang-woo's point in a little bit, but I think that I can actually see why some people find this romantic. especially in later as the series progresses. But yeah, it's unhealthy by the definition of people who at this current moment say what is healthy and what is not. So it's I don't know. I'm very open to so if it,
Serial killing?
less violence, and like if it was more of a sadomasochistic relationship, there's nothing wrong with people who pursue alternate loves as long as they're not harming anyone. But that's kind of my brief take on that.
But I agree with that wholeheartedly. But
I think
the
this is
fact
the extreme
is that they are harming a lot of people,
it's true.
including each other, throughout the entire length of the first 10 chapters. Not only do two people get murdered in front of Boom in the course of this, but he is threatened with death every single day, and it's like, I don't know, it's the definition of if gaslit is even a term that I can use, gaslit fucking completely abusive relationship. He is told one thing, and then immediately, as soon as Sang-woo's mood changes, he's put into a position of mortal danger. And that is not, I mean, call a healthy relationship whatever you will, that is never a healthy relationship where you're in mortal danger when your fucking
partner or
boyfriend's mood changes. You know.
Good night, Wesley. Sleep well. Most likely kill you in the morning.
I'll most likely kill you in the morning. Except for they weren't sleeping together at the time.
Do you have anything to say about the romantic angle of this, or non-romantic angle of this?
Nothing further as much as that, but I guess maybe I'll segue to you because I think you did a bit more research on the author. I don't know if she said outright what the intention was here, but
she says it's not a romance.
Okay, so that's her official line.
Yes.
But I do see how, again, one of you said, Steve, maybe you, that how some fans even so can see it as such. But I mean, I don't also agree. But I think because it's so complex and very unflinching about it, that the fact that there's discussion about it at all, I think, is a credit to the artwork itself. So,
and it's that negative attention is not always is better than no attention at all, and I think that is part of why it resonates with certain people. But I want to go to, you mentioned the art. Yes.
No, I was just going to say I completely agree with that. I think that is what this
is exploring.
Story is going towards, is the idea that, and it's kind of it's not a takedown per se, but it's a depiction of really, really abusive and horrible relationships, and how they can seem good to people at certain times. And the fact that you're talking about how they can seem good to people at certain times means that some people are going to be oh, I ship these two, right? In the parlance of our times, right? Because sometimes you're in that mode of thinking, and in some points of your life, you perhaps, and people or whoever might be in the mode of thinking of yeah, this is fucking really romantic, because it can seem very romantic. That's the entire reason that people stay in relationships like that, is because it can seem this person really cares about me, but what it really is they care about the way they can make you act or feel or whatever. They care about the effect that they have on you, not about you as a person, I think. And I think that's what this is really talking about. Perhaps.
Fair point.
That's a very good point. So you mentioned the art style previously. I actually was intending to talk about this prior to the romance thing, but you guys got into a conversation about it. the fact that it has the infinite scroll, as you said. So oftentimes when you read graphic novels, there's an act of flipping the page on it, which puts a inherent pacing in graphic novels. With the infinite scroll, it actually more approaches the film medium, where in graphic novels and novels in general, written works, it's you set the pace. When you watch film, the pace is set for you. You're active.
Yeah.
You're active in literature. You're passive in film.
Mm-hmm.
This flows between those two because you're an active participant in the scrolling, but because it moves by so quickly, and it's written to as well to have such a flow to it, you're active participant while also being a passive viewer of this kind of, and that's why I feel it gives you a very nightmarish quality to it. In that you're it's not like you can necessarily you can stop at any time, but the flow is already there, and you're kind of swept up in the stream.
It was insidiously pulls you along because of the way it's set up. Yeah,
what I love about it is there's like a lot of.
We read it in digital format, the Infinite Scroll. Was it ever published?
Not in English. It's been published in like Italian and Spanish, but I believe it was intended initially for the digital scrolling.
But like it's clear that the intention is the digital scroll, and there are moments of like blankness, right? Like that are very intentional. I think.
Yeah, for sure.
There are moments of like heavy text that like make you pause and stop and read, and I think that this is one of the most effective parts of this book. Is it really, really attempts to use this space that it has in an effective way, and like attempts to use all the tools that it has at hand to make you read it the way that it wants to be read, right? And like that's a really fascinating thing. Like there are times where the first, like the intro to to a chapter, as I believe they're called, is just blank, and you have to scroll down to see anything. Or like there are moments where it's like in between certain moments, it wants to give you a second, so it's like blankness. So you're scrolling and scrolling to find the next moment, right? And like it's just like maybe a word, and then you're still scrolling, and you find the next bit of illustration, and it's really, I think it's really well done in terms of that. I find that to be fascinating
for sure.
It also, in a sense, allows the content to be palatable to the reader,
right?
And I think it's a really neat aspect of it. Chris, did you have something to say for that?
I was just curious because I hadn't thought about it because I know there's so many manga online, but like a lot of certain manga or certain graphic novels or whatever, now that we have the digital medium, are made specifically for the digital media, and the fact that the Infinite Scroll is really effective in the story. But all of a sudden, but I had kind of assumed that it had already been, published as an actual physical book. So that was my question, because if the author did intend it for this to be the primary view this thing, whether or not it's been published, it's brilliant. It's another level of brilliance.
Oh, it absolutely had, and we talked about this a couple of years ago with something that we mentioned, or a talk that we reviewed with Scott McCloud, talking about the infinite canvas.
Yep.
And he was talking about that in terms of like Infinite Scroll is one thing, and that's something that's been used for a little while to a great degree, and well done. Infinite Canvas is a little bit different, but like he used Infinite Scroll, I believe, as like his jumping off point to like, all right, now you can take this like top down type of canvas and like spread it out to all 2D dimensions, right? Like you can go like east, west, north, south with it. But I think the way that this is done does it in a great way, and I think it's a lot harder to do that like fully immersive like Atlas type story as opposed to like
Sure.
this scroll type story has been used before for sure, and I've seen it before, but like this is a really well done version of it, and I think that it can be a new style of like comics, and if only it's done correctly. There's one that I think I mentioned to you guys I've been reading called Firelight Isle. Firelight Isle? I think it's called Firelight Isle by Paul Duffield. And it's done in scroll form. So, like, if you supported his Kickstarter, you could literally get a scroll with his comic on it, which is really cool. I mean, it costs a bunch of money, but like to get a scroll of this is kind of what this is. Like, if I get a scroll of this comic, like that would be the perfect way to read it, like in physical form, right? Like, I wouldn't want to read it in comic book form. I would want to read this on a scroll.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you mean, but I just thought of something that I was going to mention that hopefully fits in here. That because of the nature of the story, and for the most part, you're getting it from Young Boom's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
While you do see Sang-woo like doing his thing, because he's trapped in a situation, like it's claustrophobic in a sense. So even the panels themselves, like the dimensions of it within the scroll that you're doing, right? I think that adds to the tension and adds to the feeling of like just being there and like the immersion of it. I think in a way that you couldn't have done, to your point, Steve-O, in a different medium or in a different way, were it published or were it like not designed specifically in that way, and you're reading it as such.
So it allows for the building of tension at the reader's pace. So there's the card game, but there's also the scene where Boom is looking to escape. And the fact that the time, his perception of time shifts quite a bit as he's kind of panicking and dwelling on whether he can escape or not, is serviced quite a bit by the scroll
itself.
because
it
adds that element of surreality or passiveness to the reader as well.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that because I thought it was very effective.
So I have one more topic I want to talk about, but feel free to venture on in topics you want to talk about. Because we talked about the romance, but particularly we talked about Boom. I want to talk about Sang-woo for a bit. And this goes into our discussion, which is going to be coming up, about Hannibal. What is the motivation for Sang-woo to commit the acts he does, or to Boom? And you brought up power before, but I think there's romance is about a level, or to me at least, and is a level of intimacy and comfort to express to yourself to another person who you are on the inside, and it's about sharing that kind of experience. And that's why I think to really solidify the relationship at the end, in Sang-woo's mind, is they had to have the man die almost at Sang-woo's hand. Also, in Hannibal is pushing Will Graham to as well
to be closer to him,
create that level of intimacy.
Because I'm very Sartarian on that we are products of our reflections in others, and kind of I feel the sociopath finds very few he can find reflection in, and thus he needs to meld Boom into a kind of reflection of what he wants, or somebody could talk to.
I would say certainly he wants someone who, so like there's a level, I think there's a level of like, I want to believe that there are other people like me to a degree, right? Like, and that's more of a Hannibal thing, I guess, than Sang-woo. But since you brought it up, like that
crossover, I think
that very much felt like his thing with Will Graham. But I think a lot to a large degree in Killing Stalking, he wants someone who he can relate to like he related to his mother, seemingly. Yeah. Right? Like he kind of dresses up Boom as his mother. He kind of makes talk about how if you're gonna be mom, you have to cook and clean and all this stuff. So like,
I guess I'm also inserting a couple of episodes moving onward in the story, but I think that this is a dynamic change over him moving from the mother, which is initial draw, to seeing Boom as more than just a slave in a sense, or a plaything, and elevating him to his world.
yeah, I mean, it feels like what it's moving towards after 10 chapters, which is all I read. Like, it feels like it's moving towards him giving Boom a place in his life, right?
Bring him into his world, yes.
But only because he has survived the longest, right? So he's kind of fascinated with this in almost in the same way that he'd be fascinated with like a lab rat that finished a maze, right? Like that, where none others have finished it before then. And that's kind of what it feels like to me. Like he's just like, I wonder what's going to happen next. And that's kind of what this feels like to me. And again, I haven't read any further, so I don't know what's going to happen at this point. But he has this initial reaction, and I think the only reason he doesn't kill him in the beginning is because he has this initial reaction to him that it feels like it's like partially a mother figure, and it's filling in for his mother who he wanted to have back, right? Like throughout, but it never. So like it always feels like he's on the verge of, and in the same way like Hannibal feels like this, but I think Hannibal does it a bit better. But like regardless of that,
Well, Hannibal's more mature work.
sure, but it almost feels like he's on the verge of killing him at any given time, right? Like it almost feels like you make one wrong move, I'm going to kill you, and like that's kind of what the last 2 chapters were about. Was like, if you make a wrong move, I'm going to kill you, and he decides not to. And to kill the other guy, but yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of where I'm at with looking at this.
So you said lab rat exploration. In a sense, it's almost yes, but also domestication of a creature that you look at as inferior, and then all of a sudden you view as a companion of sorts.
Right.
And I feel that so.
I think it's spot on.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I like maybe like a dog or a horse that you're putting through its paces or something. I don't know, but like he certainly, I don't feel like he looks upon him as a fellow human being, at least in terms of the first 10 chapters. And
I don't think he looks upon anyone as a fellow human being.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I think that's how he looks upon all of humanity or everybody else in the world.
Yeah.
But this is like a pet that he's grown fond of, right?
Yeah.
Which, again, doesn't make for a great relationship, a great basis for a relationship, unless you have a fucking dog. But not of a loving, romantic relationship, I would assume.
And yet it's weird that we often refer to relationships, dogs as men, cats as women, things like that. So it seems to be
I don't know if you've ever
within
done that, but I never
our
have.
consciousness of anyway, neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Anyone
Anyway,
else have any comments on that?
No, I mean, like, I think just because we read a smaller slice of it, I'm certainly going to personally probably read more of it this in the next week or two, because yeah, I think it's a good draw and a fascinating piece, sort of on the cusp of both exploring psychological relationship angles, as we said, and also using the medium itself as a way to convey these ideas in a way that could not or hasn't been done versus like previous to the digital age, as Chris or one of you mentioned. So yeah, it was a good pick, and you know, it's again, as we said, it's unflinching. It's some pretty dark, intense stuff, but not just for shock value's sake, as I said. I think there's more there to explore, and it's using all these elements within a certain work to see sort of like as not a litmus test, but just to see what can be done within it and an exploration of how to push art forward, I suppose. Is what I want to say.
Does anyone have any other topics they want to talk about? Because those are the 3 topics I wanted to.
I really, like I said, I do, but I really, you're farther ahead of this than the rest of us are. So it's just like there's more I want to explore, but probably would benefit if we return to this after I've read some more. Because
maybe we'll do a part 2, like an actual full review when we finish it, or have read a lot more of it.
I'm glad you guys shared this with me.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Like I said, like it's interesting. I feel like I have a more I don't know. I have a harsher take on the relationship, I guess, maybe than other people, but it is an eminently like readable and fascinating story, and I think that you're going to get from it. I think that different people are going to get different things from it. I don't like the relationship, but I want to know more about it. Like it's something. I feel like it's something that happens in the world a lot. Like this, not serial killing and like all this shit, but like this type of this specific dynamic of relationship happens a lot in the world, and like I feel like it's well done in this. Granted, to a like very egregious and like overblown degree, but like I feel like this is an important story to be told, and it makes me want to read it. And I want to know if it kind of I want to know where this story specifically goes and kind of how it's handled, because it's not necessarily like I want to know what any of these characters do, but I want to know what this author thinks and how she handles the relationship, because that I kind of want to know more about like her view on this, like having tackled something this dark and like heavy. I kind of want to know what she thinks of it, and I think that reading more of this is really what's going to make me understand where she stands, as opposed to like anything else, like.
So there's a push for this to become an anime. However, I don't think it would work.
Not necessarily the best transition.
You can't just be a passive observer to this. You can't just be a passive observer to the horror. And I think this. I love this work. I've become really fascinated by this over the last spring. But yeah, I recommend reading it to everyone out there. It's again an aspect of the world I never knew about in the sense of Korean manga.
Manhwa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, I think it's a fascinating and effective and boundary-pushing piece of art within a certain medium that is doing some things that you don't obviously often see, and again, not just for no reason, for an exploration beyond that is worth taking a look at. So,
I wouldn't want it to see this as an anime, because the static images, the static images are part of the format. I think the author, she did this is the right format for it.
So I guess I'll break a little bit. I honestly think this could be a fascinating anime, and honestly, there are. I know you were. I know this is one of the more fucked up, like, manga, comics that have come out, but Japan, Korea produce some really nihilistic, fucked up shit on the regular, and like there's a lot of good stuff that is in anime form. I think that they could do a good job with this in an anime if they really wanted to, but it doesn't really matter. Like that part doesn't even really matter. What really matters is like I think that this is a fascinating concept. I hope that it's by the end treated with treated in the way that it should be. Like I don't know what that is necessarily. Like it's hard to say.
It's a bittersweet ending.
Yeah, like the thing is, like you go into something like this and it's like, wow, this is something like completely new. That means you don't know how it should end, right? Like you only know the right ending when you see it, or you only know a good ending when you see it. What'd you say?
I think it was.
Okay,
But you might disagree with me. But
right. I mean,
it's fitting
it's
ending.
it's going to be a personal thing, especially with something like this. This is a very personal thing. Like this is a, it's a very personal thing just based on what you see. Like this could be a massively triggering thing. Like I wouldn't recommend. Like if we were doing a regular show, I wouldn't recommend this to a lot of people because I don't know what people have been through in their life, and this could absolutely fucking trigger some shit. So I don't know. I think that it's really. I think it's carefully done. I think it's well done. I don't know if it's definitely not for everybody. But I'm probably going to read more of it and see what happens because it's a dark fucking comic, but it's some shit that happens to people. And, looked at without filter, like looked at without like without going into Hollywood tropes or anything like that. It's just kind of like, hey, here's some fucked up shit, like see it and see what it does to you. And that's kind of how I went into it, and that's kind of how I came out of it. So I'm looking forward to reading more of it. I hope that it is readable, and that's all I can really hope for.
Well, I guess we've all decided that we're going to revisit this one day.
Yeah,
down in the future, and
I think so. Yeah, I think it's worth it.
Yeah, and we'll see if we're changed people coming out the other end. Anyway, if that's it, I'm Jonathan Ian Menzer here with Scott Thurla.
Cheers.
Stephen Ramosi.
Good night.
Christopher Morgan.
Less likely kill you in the morning.
Thank you, Donnie, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Dread Pyre Roberts.